America's overall violent crime is falling, but the story isn't the same everywhere. In 2024, the FBI reported another national drop in violent crime, murder down nearly 15% year over year, with aggravated assaults, robberies, and rapes also declining. And the Council on Criminal Justice found homicides falling in most big cities. Yet certain city cores still carry extremely high per capita violence, and they continue to dominate most dangerous lists in 2025. Think of this episode as a reality check, a data-driven tour through 10 U.S. cities that consistently rank at or near the top for violent crime rates or homicide intensity, with what changed last year and what's changing right now. Federal Bureau of Investigation, my WordPress. We begin in Memphis, Tennessee, the city that many 2025 rankings still put at or near number 1 for violent crime among large U.S. cities. After a brutal 2023, Memphis spent 2024 pushing hard on enforcement, technology, and community initiatives. The city reports that total crime fell more than 13% last year, with homicides down about 30% versus 2023, and auto thefts plunging after the Kia Boys wave. The message from City Hall is clear: the needle is finally moving in the right direction. But even with those improvements, Memphis's per capita violence remains elevated compared with national averages, which is why it continues to top lists in 2025. For your viewers, that tension, progress on the ground but a stubbornly high starting point, is the real story. Travel north to Detroit, Michigan, a city with a long, complicated relationship with violent crime. Here's the headline you need. Detroit ended 2024 with roughly 203 homicides, its lowest tally in decades and far below the peaks of the past. That statistic matters because homicide trends often anchor public perception, and Detroit's decline mirrors the national reversal since the pandemic spike. Still, elevated aggravated assaults and armed robberies in certain neighborhoods keep pressure on residents and police. Detroit remains a fixture in danger rankings not because it isn't improving, it is, but because those rates are still high compared to safer metro cores. Baltimore, Maryland is undergoing one of the most dramatic turnarounds in the country. After topping murder charts in recent years, the city closed 2024 with 201 homicides, down 23% from 2023, alongside a steep drop in non-fatal shootings. Early to mid-2025 updates continue to show declines. This is historic progress in a place that has struggled for decades. Why is Baltimore still on a most dangerous list? Because per capita homicide and violent crime remain high by national standards, and the improvements, while real, are still relatively new. The story to tell is of a city that's finally bending the curve, just not far enough yet to fall off lists like this. Might be the biggest surprise in 2024 to 2025. After a notorious spike, the city reported a sweeping crime drop in 2024, including murders down by roughly a third compared with 2023. In early 2025, NOPD said violent offenses were continuing to decline year to date, even after counting a mass casualty terrorist attack on January 1. Excluding that anomaly, murders were down more than half at that point. Yet New Orleans still appears on danger lists because the per capita homicide rate was so high for so long that even with improvements, the city remains a top-tier outlier. Your script should flag this as a fast-moving change. The Crescent City isn't what it was 2 years ago, and viewers need to hear that. St. Louis, Missouri is another place where the narrative is shifting. Long painted as America's murder capital, the city recorded a sharp homicide decline in 2023 and continued progress into 2024 and early 2025, with the mayor's office touting some of the lowest early-year crime levels in 2 decades. The reality is nuanced. The core city's violent crime rate is still high relative to peer metros, but the trend is down, not up. If your audience still thinks St. Louis is worsening, they're behind the data. That's your on-screen line. The old headline is outdated. St. Louis violence is trending lower. Cleveland, Ohio belongs on this list because it combines persistent neighborhood-level violence with one of the clearest homicide drops in the Midwest. The city ended 2024 with about 105 homicides, dramatically below its 2020 pandemic high. That's a real shift in risk for residents. Fewer funerals, fewer retaliations, less trauma. Yet Cleveland still shows high rates of aggravated assault in pockets, and gun violence continues to impact kids disproportionately even as overall shootings fall. For viewers, Cleveland is proof that a city can be both less dangerous than it was and still dangerous compared with the national norm. The Trace Milwaukee, Wisconsin is experiencing a similar two things can be true moment. The city posted a second straight year of double-digit homicide declines in 2024, with non-fatal shootings dropping as well. But mid-2025 checkpoints show homicides ticking up from last year's pace, even as overall crime remains down, an example of how fragile progress can be. Milwaukee makes most dangerous lists because its violent crime rate remains high in specific districts and because short-term reversals are still common. If you want a crisp line for the VO, Milwaukee is improving, but the floor is still too high. Milwaukee, Birmingham, Alabama often flies under the national radar despite per capita violence that rivals bigger cities. Smaller population cities can post startling rates because each incident moves the per capita needle more. That's part of Birmingham's story. In most rankings that break out small versus large cities, Birmingham still lands near the top for murder rate. The broader southern pattern, concentrated poverty, gun availability, and strained clearance rates, keeps Birmingham in the danger conversation, even as national trends ease. This is a reminder that most dangerous doesn't only mean the biggest metros. Sometimes the most extreme per capita risks live in mid-sized hubs. Oakland, California, is the West Coast case study for volatility. After a rough 2023, some violent categories eased in 2024 in line with the national tide, but property crime and high-profile robberies kept fear high and businesses on edge. Oakland lands on lists like this because per capita violent crime remains elevated in several neighborhoods, and swings up or down can be steep from year to year. For your script, frame Oakland as a city in flux. Community-based efforts and targeted policing are tamping down shootings, but everyday victimization, robberies, carjackings still shapes how residents feel. Rounds out the list and underscores a broader point. In the post-pandemic era, danger is about per capita exposure, not just raw counts. Little Rock's homicide numbers aren't New York big, but its rate per 100,000 can rival the heavy hitters in certain years. When analysts compile most dangerous lists using rates rather than totals, Little Rock frequently appears, reflecting concentrated violence in a relatively small population base. That's why, even as national violence recedes, Little Rock still matters in this conversation. Now, zoom out. The most important new thing in 2025 is that national and big city violence are broadly retreating, not exploding, contrary to the doom scroll. The FBI's fresh 2024 release shows violent crime down again, with murders falling almost 15% from 2023, and independent trackers find homicides sliding across dozens of cities into mid-2025. That doesn't erase the misery in the neighborhoods we just discussed. It means the direction is finally right, and some of the cities on this list, Baltimore, New Orleans, Detroit, Cleveland, are driving real change. Your audience should walk away knowing both truths. These are still among the most dangerous city cores in America by rate, and yet many are safer today than they were 1 or 2 years ago. A quick word on how we built this ranking for 2025. There is no single official most dangerous cities list from the federal government. The FBI publishes the underlying data. Journalists and researchers build lists from per capita violent crime and homicide rates, usually lagged by a year. For recency, we combine those rate-based rankings of large cities, which consistently place Memphis, Detroit, Baltimore, St. Louis, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Oakland, New Orleans, Birmingham, and Little Rock near the top, with each city's newest annual or mid-year reports to reflect 2024 and early 2025 movement. That's why you heard about big drops in Baltimore and New Orleans, or Detroit's long-term low in homicides, alongside the caution that these places still rank high per capita. It's the fairest way in late 2025 to be both accurate and current. So here's your closer, the takeaway you want your viewers to remember. In 2025, America's most dangerous cities are changing, some faster than others. Memphis still tops many lists. Detroit and Baltimore are rewriting their stories. New Orleans and St. Louis are shaking off old labels, and places like Cleveland, Milwaukee, Oakland, Birmingham, and Little Rock show how local conditions can defy national averages. The national trend is down, but for too many neighborhoods, safety is still a daily battle, and progress, while real, isn't victory.